In accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act, PL 1975, Chapter 231, adequate notice of this regular meeting of the Planning Board of the Township of Franklin has been provided. As a notice to, board members, applicants, professionals, and members of the public, please speak directly into microphones so that our recording secretary can properly capture the minutes. And applicants and professionals, please fill out the sheet on the table after you've completed your testimony. With that, let's all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Councilman Imbarson?
Here.
Carl Halk?
Here.
Mahir Rafiq? Here. Theodore Chase?
Here.
Jennifer Ragnow? Here. Mustafa Manzray?
Here.
Charles Brown and Carol Schmidt asked to be excused this evening. Robert Thomas?
Here.
Sammy Shaban? And Chairman Orsini?
Here. Okay, so first item of business is minutes. Do I have a motion for the minutes from the regular meeting of March 2nd?
Motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Councilman Imbarson?
Yes.
Carl Halk?
Yes.
Mahir Rafiq?
Yes.
Theodore Chase?
Yes.
Jennifer Ragnow?
Yes.
Robert Thomas?
Yes.
And Chairman Orsini?
Yes. For the regular meeting of March 16th, also need a motion. This is one that neither Sammy or I can vote on. I was absent that night, so someone else will have to make a motion in a second.
Move the minutes.
I'll second.
Councilman Imbarson?
Yes.
Carl Halk?
Yes.
Mahir Rafiq?
Yes.
Theodore Chase?
Yes.
Jennifer Ragnow?
Yes.
Mustafa Manzray?
Yes.
Robert Thomas?
Yes.
Okay, moving on to resolutions. Sullivan Voorhees, PLN 22-00007. I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve.
Second.
Councilman Imbarson?
Yes.
Carl Halk?
Yes.
Theodore Chase?
Yes.
Jennifer Ragnow?
Yes.
Robert Thomas?
Yes.
Chairman Orsini?
Yes. Resolution for JWH Real Estate Holding Corporation, PLN 21-00023. I'll go ahead and move to approve.
Second.
Councilman Imbarson?
Yes.
Carl Halk?
Yes.
Mahir Rafiq?
Yes.
Theodore Chase?
Yes.
Jennifer Ragnow?
Yes.
Robert Thomas?
Yes.
And Chairman Orsini?
Yes. Last but not least, the Harbor Group, PLN 21-00020. I'll move that one.
I'll second.
Councilman Imbarson?
Yes.
Carl Halk?
Yes.
Mahir Rafiq?
Yes.
Theodore Chase?
Yes.
Jennifer Ragnow?
Yes.
Mustafa Manzray?
Yes.
Robert Thomas?
Yes.
Oh, wait, Mike, you can't move that. You weren't here.
Okay, well,
I'll move it.
Okay, hold on. So we're going to move Mr. Thomas up to be the first and someone else second?
I'll second it.
Do I have to call again, Jim?
Yes.
I do? Okay. Councilman Imbarson?
Yes.
Carl Halk?
yes.
Mahir Rafiq?
Yes.
Theodore Chase?
Yes.
Jennifer Ragnow?
Yes.
Mustafa Manzray?
Yes.
And Robert Thomas?
Yes.
Let the record show that Sammy Shaban is here.
Okay, for discussion, we have extension of time, Aisha Abraham, PLN 17-00001. Do you have anybody? Oh, yeah, Peter.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Peter Lanford appearing on behalf of the applicant. This was an application for a minor subdivision approval, which was granted by the board in 2018. This was a two-lot subdivision off of Wilson Road, and if the board may recall, we actually had two meetings on this minor subdivision because of some wetlands issues along Wilson Road. After the hearing, we were required to obtain approvals from the DEP and the DRCC. We needed to get flood hazard verifications, flood hazard permits, freshwater wetlands permits, which were all issued in 2021. And the DRCC approved this matter finally in February of 2022. Obviously, the minor subdivision should have been filed within 190 days, but we couldn't file it because we didn't have all of the approvals. So we are requesting 120 days to now file the subdivision deeds, which the township is holding because we have now cleaned up everything we need to clean up.
Give me an actual firm date that you want.
Let's say October 1st.
Okay. Any comments from the board?
I would move to approve it.
For October 1st, 2022, extension of time. Yeah.
Seconded.
Councilman Imbarson?
Yes.
Carl Hauck?
Yes.
Mahir Rafiq?
Yes.
Theodore Chase?
Yes.
Jennifer Ragno?
Yes.
Mustafa Manzreh?
Yes.
Robert Thomas?
Yes.
Sammy Shaban? You have to have your mic on, Sammy.
Yes.
And Chairman Orsini.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, next part of the meeting is public comments for any planning comments that anyone wants to make that are not a subject of the hearing tonight. So, in the way of hearings, I was remiss to not mention that BH 31 Schoolhouse Road LLC has been carried to August 3rd, 2022, with no further notification needed. Duke Realty Limited Partnership, the hearing tonight will have its own public comment period, so please, if you're here to comment on that, this is not the time. So for anything that is otherwise planning related, this is the time. So I make a motion to open to the public.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Meeting is open to the public for any general planning comments.
My name is Carol Schaffner. I'm the mayor of Southbound Brook, and this is a general comment. I know that we need warehouses, and I know that trucks, we can't survive without trucks, but I would like to see if we could do something better about redirecting trucks so they don't damage our people, our properties, and our cars. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public? Please.
Joseph Hamilton, Southbound Brook. Again, I kind of want to reiterate what Mayor Schaffner just said, but I also have concerns about all the warehousing being developed, distribution of water going back to the river, without having vegetation and soil to retain that back. It's being sent through the sewer faster to the river, where the river's not going to be able to handle that. The trucks have been coming through, and we'd like to see some kind of designation to stop them from coming through our town.
Thank you.
Donna Piazzolla, a resident of Southbound Brook as well. We've had a numerous number of issues with the trucks coming through. We know you can't stop necessarily warehouses being built, but hopefully you can work with the companies or the buildings to get them to redirect them appropriately. I've been on a corner where school children come back and forth, where the whole electrical light was taken down and dragged down the street. So it's a pretty big safety potential issue for us as well. So if anything that you can do to help alleviate that in some way, again, we know warehouses are going to go up and things of that nature, but it's really impacting our town. I've lived on 3 of the streets over the last years of being in town that have been impacted by this, and it's just kind of getting worse, and it would be really helpful if something could be, helped along the way with it.
Thank you.
Stephen Hoytus, Southbound Brook. Same issue with the trucks and stuff. I live at the corner of Edgewood and Elizabeth. It's just really hard for those semis to make that turn without causing a problem. I work from home. I see that happen all the time. And at least once every 6 months or so, that traffic light that's up there gets taken down. Whoop, falls right down, just like that mic. Yeah, like she mentioned, one time it got dragged all the way down Edgewood, about a mile down Edgewood, took out sideswiped cars, took down the wire, telecommunication wires and stuff that were going over the roadway. It pulled them right off the house, pulled off siding, pulled off gutters, stuff like that. There's another time that the pole just fell straight down. After a truck hit it. It was probably about 10-15 minutes before school was going to get let out. There'd probably be about 100 kids walking through that intersection. So, yeah, it's kind of become a bit of a problem, the truck traffic. So, thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no one else coming forward, and move to close the public portion.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, we go on to our loan hearing tonight, Duke Realty Limited Partnership, PLN 22-00002.
Mr. Chairman, can I speak to the, over here?
Yeah.
The issues that were just raised. So this board, you've had applications for warehouses, as you know, since you're the ones who have made the comments, have discussed this very issue about trying to direct trucks to 287 and not go on streets that where trucks should not be going. We have been talking to our consulting engineer to come up with a signage plan for that area of town to address this very issue. I just made a note to myself to remind the engineer that we need that plan as soon as possible. And that, again, is to evaluate that area of town and to get them to the 2 interchanges and not go through, less industrial streets. Hopefully, we'll be getting that plan within the next few months.
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, I was going to mention that very same thing, but maybe during this application, and to add to what Mark said, the warehouses that we've heard lately, we've asked each one to also, as I will with this one tonight, to erect lot signage directing trucks and engineering controls in terms of, entrance and egress to, because just telling truck drivers to turn this way is just never going to work. So the way to do it is engineering controls, that's signage and curbing, curb cuts that go in the right direction. So we've been doing that for every application that we've heard that's a warehouse. And we'll do that again tonight. And as Mark said, we are working for a township-wide signage plan for those streets to direct traffic to where it should go, which is 287 and not through our residential streets. Because it's a matter that's of concern not just to Southbound Brook, but to us as well. So with that, Peter, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Orsini. See, when you get away from in-person meetings, you forget them. Good evening. For the record, Peter Lanford, appearing on behalf of the applicant. This is an application, actually there are 2 applications in conjunction with this application, this project. One is a minor subdivision, which would create 2 parcels, one parcel being the 40 43.79 acres, which would house the warehouse that we are proposing to construct, and the other parcel is a 24.81 acre parcel, which is located behind the rotor clip facility on Davidson Avenue. That parcel currently contains solar fields and some billboards. There will be some variances associated in conjunction with that minor subdivision. There is also a site plan application for the warehouse, which will...
Peter, before you get to that, I just want to correct you. You indicated it was a minor subdivision. It's a major.
Technical major, because should I keep going? Okay. Mr. Clark is correct. It is a two-lot subdivision, but it's a technical major subdivision. Again, there is also a site plan application for the warehouse. There are a couple minor variances associated with the warehouse itself. Regarding the applicant, Duke Realty is one of the largest logistic real estate investment trusts in the United States. This company is publicly traded in the New York Stock Exchange, and it's a member of the S&P 500s. They have over 155 million square feet in 19 states in the United States, and this is their first facility in Franklin Township, although they have many other facilities in the state of New Jersey, over 8.3 million square feet and 22 buildings. The company also, for the record, intends to build a building and retain ownership. This is not a building that is going to be built to be sold. They keep their product and will become a member of the community for the long term. This evening, I have numerous people here to testify. I have my site engineer, my traffic consultant, my architect should be here shortly, and the planner to justify the variances. I also have a representative of the applicant. If the board has any questions of him, I will not call him unless the board has some questions or he needs to answer some questions. With that introduction, I would like to call Mr. Chris Soleil.
Mr. Chairman, if I can deal with the housekeeping matter, can you make a representation with regard to the corporate disclosure for the applicant?
The corporate disclosure, there is no individual that owns more than 10% of the company. Like I said, it's a publicly traded company, so...
Thank you very much.
All right, Chris, what did we decide, boards or TV?
It's not showing up.
Okay.
Going low tech tonight. Cool like the old school.
LG has a nice facility in this town. Maybe we can get some TVs.
There we go. CBS Beyond, yes.
We swear the witness in.
Would you please raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Name and address for the record, please.
Yes, my name is Christopher Soleil. Last name is S as in Sam, Z as in Zebra, A-L-A-Y. I currently work at Menlo Engineering Associates, located at 261 Cleveland Avenue in Highland Park, New Jersey. I've been a licensed professional engineer in the state of New Jersey for 14 years, and my license is in good standing. And I've testified for multiple boards throughout the state, Middlesex County, Somerset County, multiple counties throughout the state. I don't believe this board, though.
I would offer the testimony of Mr. Soleil. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Please accept it, Peter.
Mr. Soleil, your office prepared both the subdivision plan and the site plan, which are the subject of this application,
That is correct.
and they were under your direction?
That's correct.
Okay, and can you please describe the property in question?
Yes, so for this evening, we've prepared for you multiple exhibits. The first exhibit is an aerial exhibit depicting the property and surrounding areas over an aerial. The exhibit is entitled 187 Davidson Avenue, Existing Conditions Exhibit, and dated 6/1/22.
Can we have that marked as A1, Mr. Clarkin?
A1, please.
Why is it called 187 Davidson Avenue when it doesn't have frontage on Davidson Avenue?
The property was previously owned by the owners of 187 Davidson Avenue, and it kind of carried through the application, although it's being subdivided off and somewhat confusing.
Yeah, Dr. Chase, the property did not have a street address on Elizabeth Avenue. That was the minor subdivision that was referred to by Mr. Clarkin previously when that back piece was cut off from the front. The front piece is the rotor clip site.
The second exhibit we've prepared for you is an access easement exhibit. It's entitled Solar Field Access Easement Exhibit, again, 187 Davidson Avenue, and this one is dated, I believe, May 11th, 2022.
Dated under your direction and control.
That's correct.
A2, please.
And the third exhibit is a three-color rendering of the proposed submitted site plan over an aerial background with the landscaping shown. It's entitled 187 Davidson Avenue, overall plan exhibit, and dated 6/1/22.
Under your direction and control, then A3.
That's correct.
Okay, Chris, now going back to A1, describe the subject property and the existing conditions.
Yes, so the property is an irregularly shaped lot. It's almost a reverse L, designated as Block 502.02, Lot 12.03, Block 504, Lots 1 and 2, and Block 506.01, Lots 19 through 22, as shown on the tax map of Franklin Township. The property is located, the northern part of the property is located just south of the I-287 corridor, with the lower reverse L, bottom L area, located on the east side of Elizabeth Avenue, right near the intersection with Grant Street. The property has frontage along Grant Street and Elizabeth Avenue, and the overall property is 68.6 acres and is located entirely within the BI business and industry zone. Surrounding the property, there are industrial and commercial uses to the west and east, as well as wooded land and the Elizabeth Avenue School to the northwest of the property. The I-287 corridor runs along the northern property line with residential properties beyond that, and there's single-family homes and a multifamily development located along the south of the subject property. Under existing conditions, the property is partially developed. It contains two separate solar fields. There's a larger solar field located within the southern half of the site, and a smaller solar field located at the northwest corner.
Can you point those out for the board members and the members of the public that are here?
Yes, you can see the large developed solar field is generally right at the center of the site, and the smaller at the northwest corner. The remainder of the property is mostly undeveloped. The site is heavily constrained due to environmental restrictions. There's an unnamed tributary that enters the site near the northeast corner. It splits as it gets nearer to the larger solar field, with one leg of the unnamed tributary heading to the west, somewhat bifurcating the site into a northern and southern half, and the other leg of the unnamed tributary running along the eastern property line. On the uplands of the tributary, there's wetlands with wetland buffers and associated flood hazard and stream corridors, which, like I said, heavily restricts the developable area of the site. The many colorful lines you can see running through the property are all the different restricted lines regulated by the Township, DEP, DRCC, and so on. In addition to that, there's additional small pockets of isolated wetlands that will be part of the application. And there is access to the site from the dead end of Grant Street, accessing the larger solar field, and an additional access point at the northeast corner, which is accessed via an access easement through the Rotor Clips property, which is 187 Davidson Avenue, from the Davidson Avenue right-of-way. And I will move now to the next exhibit.
And before we get to that, I would like to put into evidence the access easement between the parcel that we are subdividing, which we're calling parcel B, and the Rotor Clip property, which gives that back parcel access through the Rotor Clip property. That access easement was recorded in Somerset County as dated September 9, 2013. I'd like to have that marked as A1.
A4.
I'm sorry, A4.
Before you move the slide, may I ask a quick question on some of the borders? For instance,
On the other slide,
on proposed Lot B, I can see the boundary between the School Board of Ed property and proposed Lot B. Who owns where's the split in the boundary in proposed, on the other side of toward Elizabeth Avenue where the three houses are? Who owns the woods? Where does the school property end coming on that side where the three houses are? Or do the three houses own the property all the way back to proposed Lot B?
I don't have it on these exhibits, and off the top of my head, I don't recall. I'd have to take a look at the site plans to get a better idea.
I just think the school may be adequately buffered if it owns most of that property. But I don't see any lines on any maps here.
Can we let the record show that Charles Brown is here at 759?
Overall plan. No.
so Bob, is just to get to is your concern about the amount of buffering between the school and the proposed warehouse, is that the essence of your question?
Well, yeah, and whether anything can happen to that, would it buffer in the future?
Okay.
If there's property that goes with the three houses, there's no control in this hearing over that. I just want to know where the side buffer for Elizabeth Avenue School is, or the side boundary.
It appears from the plan that the school is adjacent to our site, and there is part of the wetlands that were referred to and the streams that were referred to by Mr. Saleh are actually on the Board of Education property. So many of the woodlands that we're talking about are Board of Education.
Okay, so the school goes all the way to proposed Lot A.
Correct. It appears that it extends beyond and has a common lot line with the lots of this application.
And then the houses have no impact other than what would probably there be a normal lot size in depth. The houses don't own those properties.
They don't own the woods
Okay.
beyond the back. And you'll see, again, with the environmentally constrained area with that tributary that runs along that kind of northwestern property line at an angle is all restricted and cannot be disturbed. So that provides a wide swath of buffer between even the residential houses and this proposed development.
Okay. Thank you.
Again, just to touch on this access easement before moving into the subdivision, the rear of the lot, specifically the smaller solar field, is accessed and can only be accessed via this 30-foot wide existing access easement between lot 33.03 and the subject lot of this application. The 30-foot wide easement extends to Davidson Avenue through the entire rotor clip property and onto the existing subject property's land. There's a roadway that extends from the rotor clip property, kind of bends to the west and south towards the larger solar field, and then there's a smaller dirt and gravel access way to the smaller solar field. And again, that's an existing condition, and there's no other way to access that solar field today or will be in the future.
Is proposed Lot B eligible or open for any further development? And if so, are the access roads space granted big enough to handle it?
There's a small isolated area, I believe it's about 2 acres, that is developable land. In assessing it, it looks like it would be better suited as maybe a parking field for some applicant, but it doesn't look like it provides sufficient, developable area for any sort of larger facility.
It's only 2 acres? I thought because there's the one area that's adjacent to 287, and then there's the solar field which could be redeveloped. So the combination of those 2 areas, how many acres is that?
That's slightly larger. So the solar field, I believe, is a little bit over 1 acre. The area that's not yet developed, it's just wooded, is about 2 acres. And those 2 areas are actually, again, split and bifurcated by wetlands and wetland buffers.
The solar field's only 1 acre?
It's a little bit over 1 acre, but less than 2 acres.
So you have 3 to 4 acres of developable land?
Correct. Again, split into 2.
And how is access, if somebody wanted to develop that in the future, how is access gained to that proposed lot?
Somebody would have to extend the roadway that enters our site now to make a more formal access point to that developable area.
What road does that connect to?
The
Public road?
Davidson Avenue, via the access easement.
But doesn't it go through the rotor clip facility?
Yes. It's a 30-foot wide access easement through the rotor clip facility.
Physically, what is in that? Is it going through a parking lot of rotor clip or a loading area? I mean, a usable area of rotor clip that's used for their operations?
It appears it is used for their operations, but it's a sufficient 24-foot wide roadway, has curb and striping down the center. I actually drove down it earlier tonight just to take a look.
I could tell you, staff has not looked at this, about whether, I mean, they're proposing a lot where in order to access it, you have to drive through a parking lot or a loading area of another site. And they need a variance to do that. So staff has not reviewed that and has not determined whether that's sufficient access to.
Wait a minute, Mr. Haley.
I'm speaking, Mr. Lanford. Can I finish? I let you speak. I let him speak. I didn't interrupt him. Staff is not recommending granting of that variance in that subdivision for the reasons.
May I ask Mr. Haley some questions? Mr. Haley, did the township approve the site plan for the solar fields?
There was an application for solar fields. There was also another application on that property for a for the billboard. And I'm sure at the time that the testimony was that a solar field probably has 1 car, some very limited amount of access for that property to service.
That's not my question. My question was there an application? No, you answer my question. My question was...
I'm not being deposed, I'm not in court. You ask a question, I'm providing the answer to the benefit of this board.
All right, we need to have a discourse here that's civil, please, all right? Let's not interrupt each other, all right? Is there a question pending?
There is. The question was the solar field that is on that site and the billboards that were on that site approved by either the planning board or zoning board of this township?
And the answer is yes. Thank you. No, I'm going to continue, as I may. I don't have to limit my answers to a yes or no question, only because Mr. Lanford wants me to limit it to a yes or no?
Mark, if you let me finish, I think you have the opportunity to give your yes answer with an explanation. So let's proceed.
So
Please.
I would say yes, and I think it would be understandable that they might have been satisfied with that explanation because the solar field was to the benefit of Rotoclip, and the billboards were owned by Rotoclip, and there are both facilities that need very little access. You're now creating a lot that has 4 acres of buildable land. We're also in 2022 where we know builders are putting warehouses of all sizes on every last piece of land available, and this land is zoned for that. So it is very conceivable that somebody's going to want to build some type of light industrial use on that 3 to 4 acres of developable land. It is my recommendation and that of the engineer that the board not grant access to a lot that doesn't have sufficient access, that requires somebody to drive through the parking lot in the loading zone of another facility. It's poor planning.
Mr. Healy, the board approved that access, did it not?
I've already answered that question, and for those reasons that I just stated.
And you indicate that maybe there's 1 car a month or 1 truck a month. I assume when you build the solar fields, how did the solar panels get to that site? Are they dropped in on helicopters, or did they have to drive through the Rotoclip lot?
They were an accessory to the Rotoclip lot, so Rotoclip, it was just like anybody building something accessory on their own property.
Okay. And except it's not their own property, it's a related company, but it's not their own property, correct? That's why we're having this discussion.
Who gets the power from those solar fields?
Yes, okay. And by the grant of this subdivision, there is no way that the operations on that site changes from what it is today, correct?
Now,
Ask that question again?
I am saying if the subdivision were granted and somebody needed to access the solar fields or the billboards, they would still go through the Rotoclip site through the access easement.
Yes.
Okay? And if somebody, as you say, may want to develop the rear portion of that site, they'd have to come back to the planning board for site plan approval, would they not?
They would?
Okay? And if they were going to come back to the planning board for site plan approval, you would review the plans, the engineer would review the plans, and one of the things you would look at would be access, correct?
Yes.
And if access was not sufficient for a proposed use back there, you would then recommend to the board that they not approve the application, would you not?
I know where you're going with this. My recommendation is that the application before this board right now, part of it is to create that lot. The board needs to look down the road, and it has an obligation to contemplate how that lot might be developed. And you're asking for a variance to not have that lot have access on an improved road.
When the solar fields were approved, the back piece was part of the piece that we're also looking to put a warehouse on, right? It was part of the same parcel. It was a 60-acre parcel, correct?
The exact configuration of that lot was 8 years ago, and it's also been subdivided a few different ways over the years.
But right now, we're subdividing. That lot right now has frontage on Elizabeth Avenue.
While you're looking, one of the things that bothers me is that when we looked at the application for the billboards and for the solar fields, we knew what the use was. Now, there's a good point Mr. Healy has. We're asked to approve a driveway, an access road through a driveway, and we don't know who the end user's going to be.
Nor do you know if there will be an end user.
Guys.
I'm going to weigh in on this one. We don't know how Lot B is going to be developed, and you won't know if the 30-foot wide access easement to Davidson is or is not adequate. That, in my opinion, is a decision for the site plan application when someone comes back to develop Lot B. I do not find it as a reason to deny the subdivision relief that the applicant is requesting at this time. You just don't know how Lot B is going to be developed. The adequacy of the easement is for another day.
Could I ask a question? Is the applicant that is here tonight going to retain ownership of Lot B?
No. Lot B is,
Or are you going to give it back to Rotoclip?
Rotoclip will keep it. They're selling to us the Lot A, which is where the warehouse will be constructed. So Rotoclip will continue ownership of Lot B, and their other related company will continue to own, obviously, the manufacturing facility on Davidson Avenue.
Okay, that makes a big difference.
All right, let's, we have a legal opinion here, which I trust implicitly, so let's continue.
We'll move on from that issue then. Okay, so we've talked about the access, and we talked about Lot B. Let's go to Lot A, which is really the focus of this application. And if we can bring up the I think it's A3, correct? Okay. And the building that we are going to construct is on land that is partially wooded and also partially consisting of solar fields, correct?
That's correct.
So the large solar field that everybody saw in Exhibit A is going to be removed, and explain to the board what we're doing as far as that parcel.
Yes, so the existing solar field, stormwater management, and there's an existing single-family dwelling near the Grant Street Elizabeth Avenue intersection that will all be demolished to be improved now for this one-story, 436,960 square foot warehouse that includes 50,000 square feet of office space that is split at both the east and west sides in half, so 25,000 square feet of office on each end of the warehouse. The building meets all bulk requirements for setbacks, building height, FAR, and lot coverage. And there's associated parking proposed of 446 parking spaces, including handicap spaces that are evenly dispersed throughout the site. There's approximately 157 spaces to the west of the building, 124 spaces that would be parked abutting the building on the north face, and 165 spaces within a parking field to the east of the building. The spaces are 9 by 18 feet in dimension, and the drive aisles are 26 foot wide, all complying with the township ordinance.
Can I ask a question? Why is the parking so much in excess of what's required? And can we cut any out? Because it's a warehouse. I mean, I can't imagine what you'd need. So, I mean, if you thought you need something in the future, can it be banked? You know where I go with it.
It absolutely can be banked. We showed all of the parking. We do not need to build all of it. I've discussed that with my client, and as we go through the testimony, we'll talk about the banking of the parking spaces.
Oh, okay, and feel free to, if there's a unique reason for why so much parking was proposed, I'd like to hear it. But, yeah, I mean, I like what you're saying.
There's a reason why it was proposed, and again, my client is in this industry and has built numerous warehouses. Some of them may have a demand for parking like that is being proposed. We don't have a user, so we do not intend to build all of that parking space, all of those parking spaces. We will land bank them, but we then have the ability, if a user comes along that needs the parking, to unbank them. Sure. So rather than see me more often.
So just as long as at the end of the night we get final numbers of what you'll construct and what you'll bank to go,
we'll get to that.
That would be good.
So, and another quick question, please. Would you show me on the map relative to the warehouse location where the development avenue is?
School?
Not the school, the residential development on the Grant Avenue side, toward the Grant Avenue side.
Sure. So if you can see Grant Street, which runs along the southern portion of this exhibit that's highlighted, just beyond that, this kind of shaded part, there's a row of single-family homes, and then beyond that, it just gets cut off at the end, but that's where the multifamily development starts.
Now, is there any special buffering proposed on that side?
Not currently. The applicant is seeking to obtain some of those lots, and additional landscaping can be worked
Well,
with the board
the
and professionals.
natural vegetation on that side, so I was just there this evening, is sparse. So your activity there is getting relatively close to a pretty big residential development. I would expect something put there.
Understood, and we can absolutely provide a more substantial buffer within that area.
Also, Mr. Thomas, those houses, the lots on the other side of Grant Street, some of them are owned by the township, and the other
I know
lots...
that. I'm concerned about the avenue development.
Right, what I'm saying is some of the lots, the residential lots between Grant Street and the avenue development are owned by us, so we can put buffering in there. We own some of those lots.
All right, because it's pretty bare.
So let me like redirect things a little bit here. So as much as I like the dialogue, and when we were virtual, we saved all our questions to the end because it's too wonky going back and forth on Zoom or whatever we were using. In this case, I like the board to question all the witnesses as they come up. We don't open the hearing but once for public comment. It's not a zoning board where we open it after every piece of testimony. That being said, we'll never get through this, and you might get some answers to your questions as you go along. So I'd like you to finish your presentation, and then we'll come back to any questions for you before we go to the next witness. But let's try to get through this. We might hear what we might be asking.
Thank you. Yeah, my next point was actually going to be in regards to the land bank parking and parking requirements. So the facility requires 177 parking spaces. As I stated, we're proposing 446. The applicant, through their reputable history, their experience in the industry, feels that they can park this facility at 1 per 1,500 square feet of gross floor area, which would leave us with 291 spaces to be constructed and 155 spaces to be land banked, to be determined exactly where those land bank spaces at a later date, and it can be worked out with the board professionals. The parking spaces will include the required EV requirements per the latest state legislature. That requires 4% of the provided parking to be make-ready EV vehicles for this type of facility. Additionally, along the south face of the building, being a warehouse, we are proposing 58 loading docks. Now, the previous site plan that was submitted to the township actually called for 52 loading docks. Since then, the architect has reworked some column spacing, and it permitted us to increase the number to 58 loading docks, as well as 2 drive-up ramps located at either end of the loading dock locations. The docks will be 13 feet on center and 60 feet of depth. Across from the loading docks and the loading berth, there are 70 trailer spaces dimensioned at 12 feet wide by 60 feet in depth, located for, like I said, trailer parking and trailer storage. Access to the site is going to be by way of 3 driveway entrances. 2 on Grant Street and 1 from Elizabeth Avenue. Now, Grant Street itself is going to be improved to be a full 36-foot wide roadway with curb pavement and utility infrastructure such as drainage. The 2 access points on, sorry.
And before we go further on that, there was a comment, I just want to make it clear for the record. There was a staff comment concerning the township's perhaps vacating Grant Street because Grant Street only services our building. I think if the board recalls when we did the property on Wiley with Happer Street, we had the issue of that street was going to be only servicing that facility. We have already started discussions with the township about vacating the street. We would be glad if they vacated it. We would accept that street. We would then improve it to whatever standards we need for our use, and that would also, quite frankly, eliminate a couple of the variances that we are seeking. But right now, the township hasn't gotten to the point to vacate it yet, but we are in that process.
Yeah, and I'll speak to that. Township staff is recommending that the road be vacated.
and given to the applicant. As Mr. Lanford said, the road would only be serving their property. There's really no reason for the township to have to own, maintain, plow, pave that road in the future. So staff is supportive of that route.
That's a relief to hear that. But to your point, Peter, with the variances you're asking now, because it has not been officially vacated yet, we would have to consider those variances in the application. They just wouldn't ever come to fruition if it was vacated, is that right?
Correct. We would be allowed 2 driveways. We are seeking 3. If Grant Street is vacated, we would be down to 2 driveways, which would be conforming.
Okay, thank you.
That's correct. So currently with the Grant Street as a public right-of-way, we have 2 access points on Grant Street. The driveway located nearer to Elizabeth Avenue is a 36-foot wide roadway that enters into a loop road that runs along the exterior of the proposed development. It accesses the multiple parking areas and provides access for emergency vehicles as well as two-way truck traffic in the case that there could be this building does lend itself to possibly two tenants, so it would provide access, private access for a second tenant possessing the rear portion of the property. The second access point on Grant Street is nearer to the end of the dead-end Grant Street and accommodates a guard shack prior to entering the loading area for the facility. And the third entrance point is a 24-foot wide driveway on Elizabeth Avenue. It's near the midpoint of the Elizabeth Avenue frontage. It's intended to be for pedestrian vehicles only to access the multiple parking fields. And per recommendations from the board professionals, we do intend to put no trucks allowed signage along that roadway so that trucks will know to gain access at the 36-foot wide Grant Street driveway. In regards to refuse, we're proposing two compactors, one located at each end of the loading docks. It'll actually take up two of the loading docks for the two compactors. They'll be located adjacent to the drive-in ramps, and recycling will be collected interior baled and picked up by a private hauler.
So there will not be any need for any dumpsters on this facility, correct?
That's correct. We do have proposed signage. There's one freestanding sign proposed near the intersection of Grant Street and Elizabeth Avenue. It's to meet all standards of the township ordinance regarding setback, area, and height. And there's 4 facade signs. We don't currently have them detailed as we do not currently have a tenant, but the ordinance permits 1 facade sign per side of the building. So we are seeking approval for 4 signs in compliance with the ordinance at 100 square foot and all dimensioning to meet the ordinance as well. Yeah. There are a few variances associated with the proposed development. Again, we touched on this already, the access to Lot B created by the subdivision, or the lack of access. The loading within the front yard setback is currently a variance that's required. There's trailer storage spaces that are within 12 feet of the Grant Street right-of-way. Again, once Grant Street is vacated, this variance will no longer be required, but currently we do need to seek a variance for that. It's the trailer storage setback approximately 12.6 feet, where 50 feet is required for the front yard setback. The proposed number of driveways requires a variance, where 3 are currently proposed on public roadways. Only 2 are permitted. And we have 2 waivers that are being sought. One for the loading berth depth. The ordinance requirements requires twice the proposed truck, permitted truck for the site, which is going to be a WB67. The truck is approximately 73.5 feet long. The loading berth needs to be twice that. We're proposing 130 feet, where the required depth would actually be 147 feet. This is an industry standard. A 60-foot loading space, in addition to a 70-foot loading berth, is industry standard. The applicant finds this depth to be acceptable and is used in multiple locations for their facilities. And the last waiver is for interconnecting sidewalks that connect the main entrance to the parking fields and then to Elizabeth Avenue, or the street frontage. And the applicant doesn't see a current need for it for this type of facility. If the board or the township will require sidewalks along Elizabeth Avenue, the applicant is happy to do so, but given the location and type of facility, don't feel it's necessary.
Again, Mr. Chairman, we would be happy to put sidewalks in. This is an isolated lot further away from the retail, so I'll leave it up to the board.
Sidewalks, always.
If you want them, again, you can have them, and but it'll be the board's decision. And obviously, if we give you the sidewalks, we will have the sidewalk from the public sidewalk to the building so pedestrians can access the building.
It is isolated, but if you're willing to build them, I don't see a reason to say no.
Yeah, we either give you the money or put them in. It's up to, it's up to you.
Yeah, and the only restriction why, another reason we feel it's not necessarily, the site doesn't necessarily lend itself is due to the environmental constraints. There's the stream corridor, which there's no development permitted, so the sidewalk will really start and end within our property because ends of the frontage are restrained by wetlands.
He's already agreed to provide the sidewalk, so we can move on.
Yeah, I mean, you can only construct them where you can construct them, so.
Project is a major development in regards to stormwater management. We disturbed more than an acre and propose increasing impervious by more than a quarter acre. This requires us to meet all stormwater management requirements of the township, DEP, all outside agencies, which we are doing. So we're meeting the stormwater requirements, utilizing green infrastructure. We have 8 proposed bioretention basins to meet water quality requirements. We have a wet pond to meet runoff reduction requirements, and we have an underground infiltration trench to infiltrate roof runoff to meet groundwater recharge requirements. We've actually already received approval from the DRCC pending board and county approval, so we're working our way through the outside agency permits and are in good shape in regards to that situation. And additionally, the new utilities for the building will all be accessed via Grant Street and connecting to existing infrastructure within Elizabeth Avenue, telecommunications and electric. The applicant does propose substantial landscaping surrounding the site along the perimeter and within the interior of the perimeter. This site plan attempts to maintain as much of the wooded area, especially along Elizabeth Avenue, that provides a nice buffer from the public right-of-way to the building. You can see between Grant Street and the new driveway along Elizabeth Avenue, we're maintaining a large wooded area that's going to remain undeveloped, provides a nice buffer. In addition to that, we're proposing 107 shade trees, 81 evergreens, 17 ornamental trees, 620 shrubs, and 1,338 ground cover. Tree replacement calculations have been provided. We meet the replacement requirement for new one tree per 2,000 square pavement, but in addition to taking out the number of existing trees, the applicant has agreed to provide a contribution to the tree fund. And lastly, for lighting, the applicant's proposing to design the site to be safe and adequate to meet township ordinance requirements. There's 20 pole-mounted.
Chris, can you please put the mic to your face?
Oh, I'm sorry. The applicant's proposing, the site design is proposing 20 pole-mounted LED fixtures mounted at 30 feet in height, 10 wall-mounted fixtures at 30 feet, and 7 wall-mounted fixtures at 26 feet, all LED fixtures to be energy efficient and to reduce glare and uplighting into the sky. It provides an average of 1.37 foot candles, minimum of 0.5 foot candles, and an average to minimum uniformity ratio of 2.74 to 1 within the parking areas and drive aisles. And again, these all meet the township ordinance requirements.
Okay, and there will be no lighting spillover. All lighting will be contained on site, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, a couple other quick questions. You've had an opportunity to review the report from CME concerning engineering changes to the plan.
That's correct.
Can we address all of the comments in CME's report?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, and you've reviewed the report of Mr. House from Fire,
Yes.
and he recommended some changes as to hydrant locations and other things. We have no problem complying with his report.
That's correct.
And then Mr. Healy's report, I think we touched on some of the things. Oh, can you touch upon providing an area for drop-off and pickup of employees? Can we have a designated area for that? And also for bicycle parking?
Yes, we're providing bicycle racks as well as pickup drop-off areas near the main entrance of the building.
I think you had a late, or at least we got a notice of a late Franklin Township Sewerage Authority report.
We can comply with that.
Good there, okay.
I'm just trying to make sure I covered everything in Mr. Healy's report. I think we did. I have no further questions of this witness.
Unfortunately, I do. One.
Well, we'll see how unfortunate it is, but go ahead, Bob.
This is an application that includes 50,000 square feet of office space. Any warehouse application I've heard here in the last couple of years, it's maybe 4,000, 5,000. If the building is split in half, maybe it's that on each end. Would you address what's different here? Why 50,000 square feet? And is there special accommodations in the site plan to handle what's associated with 50,000 square feet of offices? Is this all warehouse related, or is there going to be a miniature office park in the building? That's a big floor space.
I think that the representative of the owner applicant, Mr. Lizza, can answer that question. Do you want him to answer it now and have him sworn in?
He can do it, well, it's up to you.
Well, yeah, why don't we have him sworn, just in case we have any other questions besides Bob's, at least he'll be sworn in.
Thank you.
Raise your right hand. Solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Name and address, please.
David Leza from Duke Realty, Development Services Manager in our Jersey City office, 3 2nd Street, Jersey City, New Jersey.
Okay, can you answer the question, please?
Yes, so what we're showing on our application is the max permitted per code. As we do not have a tenant today, we want the flexibility to show them the potential. I agree with what you said, that it's unlikely to be that much. Likely 10, 15,000 square feet is what I would anticipate. But to have the flexibility to tell a tenant that this is what is something that we can do is good for us to have.
Okay, so it's not guaranteed, like you said, that that's going to be that.
That's correct.
That would depend on your users.
That's correct.
Does it impact, I guess it's for other people, but does 50,000 square feet of offices, if it's maxed out, kind of presents a different traffic issue, possibly.
Possibly.
I don't know, but.
It depends on the tenant.
Maybe the real question is, we didn't get to this, how's the building going to be used? You call this a fulfillment center as opposed to a warehouse? Or, how's it going to operate? Or what's coming in here? What's going out? Who's picking up what's going out, and so on?
No, I can speak to that, and I think we can touch on a little bit on that during our traffic presentation as well. Talked about how we got to the trip generation. But for a building this size, we anticipate a typical warehouse distribution user, short-term storage of goods. They come from potentially a manufacturer, warehouse, to a store, to a consumer, between warehouses, and that would be the main use of this building. As I said, I would not anticipate that much office space, but that would be the intended use. And I can't speak to it 100% because we don't have a tenant yet. So the square footage in the office just lends us some flexibility to show to a potential tenant what we could do.
Okay, thank you.
Of course.
Mr. Chairman, a couple of follow-up questions, if I could.
Yes, please, Chair.
All right. If this application is approved, would you accept the condition that all of this office space will be ancillary to the primary warehouse use?
Yes.
Okay. Number two, would you also agree that this office space would not be used for training purposes that might bring in large amounts of people all at one time?
That, I don't know if I can answer. When I think of training at warehouses, I think of employee safety training.
You wouldn't be bringing outside people in for training that would not be working at this location?
That is accurate.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Ted, please. Or either Chris or...
Solar cells. On the one hand, will you put solar cells on the roof of a building, perhaps through one of the firms that do community solar? We already have several installations of that nature in Franklin Township, and I think I've seen some indication that Duke has done this in some places. On the other hand, what's happening to all of the solar cells that are in the solar cell field there?
Yep, so I can speak to both of those. So an architect can speak to that a little bit as well, but the building will be designed to handle loads to accommodate solar panels. We do not install solar as part of our standard building development. It's just not what we do. We're not in the solar business to install solar. Typically, it's up to the tenant. If they want solar for their purposes, we are open to that as well. You're correct, we did have a project recently where there was community solar built on top after some coordination and communication with the community in the town. But we do not install solar as a base standard on our developments.
But the building is capable of holding it.
That's correct.
That's really the biggest issue, because if it's not, the roof isn't designed, then it's hard to put it in. But
100% plan for it.
Okay.
It seems like you put some forethought into asking for these additional parking spots, which are going to be banked, I think. There must be a reason. Your company is large enough that you have had prior experience in building and operating these sort of spaces elsewhere in the country. Have there been instances where such large amount of parking spots were requested and banked, and in the future, in the ensuing month, following the building and the occupation, have they been made use of in terms of constructing and putting to actual use? And if so, what are those kind of uses of these spaces that you have built elsewhere?
Yep, so that's a good question. The parking spaces get laid out kind of as a result of what's left when we lay out a building. The ends where it gets narrower, that's where we fit as most parking as we can. I know Pete touched on it in the beginning. Duke Realty warehousing is what we do. It's all we do. You know, it's what we know. Parking is important. Clients, tenants, they want parking. They want the flexibility. Different tenants have multiple shifts. Parking, is an attractive piece of a property. We pride ourselves on having some of the best developments in the industry. Attracts the best tenants. So parking is key. The number that we've agreed to bank that gets us down to 1 per 1,500, that's an average of what the parking in our Northeast portfolio comes down to. So I look at all of our buildings. Some are 1 per 900, 1 per 15, 16, 1700. So I look at that, and I land at 1 per 1,500 as an average that we're comfortable kind of as a base number for. I don't know offhand how many other projects have actually land banked and then gone back for them, but the 1 per 1,500 is a comfortable number in a project where there would be more parking, say maybe 1 per 900. It's going to be potentially a 2-tenant building that has multiple shifts. They need the flexibility and extra parking just to make their operations work. But based on this size facility, the type of warehouse distribution tenant that we would expect, I think 1 per 1,500 is where we'd be comfortable.
Do you have any other questions for Chris or any?
Just a few.
Yeah, go ahead,
Just
Mark.
to make clear, so as far as the Grant Street, so as I indicated before, staff certainly recommended that it be vacated. On the flip side, though, we do recommend that if it's, what they're presenting basically is a plan that is predicated on that vacation. If the road, for some reason, is not vacated, then it needs to be a public street and what they're proposing is not adequate for a public street, including but not limited to it needing to be a cul-de-sac. And there's some aspects of the way in which it's being proposed to be constructed from an engineering perspective that the township wouldn't want to take on as a public road. So I explain that to say that staff would definitely recommend that if you do approve this, that it be conditioned upon them being, successful in having that road vacated and granted to them. If they are not successful, they will have to come back to amend the site plan.
Yeah, I noticed from your report, it says developer's agreement would be required and various other things if it's not vacated. I'm sure that's, issues that you probably don't want to handle if you can avoid it, but...
Yeah, and the cul-de-sac issue, which was raised by Mark and also raised by John House, we've looked at that, we can provide it. If we have to come back to deal with those things, we will. Like I said, hopefully the town will vacate the road, and then we won't have to address all of those issues. If the road is vacated, your client owns, there's a few township-owned properties, but the rest of those properties are owned by your client or subsidiaries of your client? Correct. Okay. What's the plan for those properties? Nothing immediate. I mean, we've also discussed with the township, if the township doesn't need the township-owned land, we'd acquire all of that, and it may be if we need it for storage or parking, but that would be subject of a new application. Right now, we have no intended use for them. There are two township-owned lots further down on Grant Street that we're looking to acquire also. Yeah, I think if that road becomes vacated, I think you're going to have to consolidate those into this lot, because you're going to have lots without any frontage. Well, we'd have to consolidate all of those lots. They don't necessarily. The first lot has frontage on Elizabeth Avenue. Correct? The first lot. Yeah, the first lot has frontage on Elizabeth Avenue. It does, but then the rest don't. Yeah, so either we have to consolidate them all into the first lot or consolidate them. We haven't looked at that. We can work out the details, but... That's correct. I'm just bringing that to your attention now, that if that road is vacated, you may have to consolidate those in some way. Yeah. Because otherwise, they're just going to be isolated lots without any frontage whatsoever. Yeah, and you don't like that. Oh, anyway.
Hey, from a staff perspective, is there any reason why we can't build into a developer's agreement the requirement to construct the cul-de-sac if the street is not vacated, as opposed to bringing them back?
I think generally the township would we would prefer not to handle roads like this by developer's agreement. I mean, if it's going to be serving a single developer, like Happer with the other developer, it should just be owned by them and their responsibility, and not have the relationship where the township still technically owns it, but there's some developer's agreement that gets lost over time that spells out, we would just prefer to kind of cut bait and have them own it and...
All right. I'd say for now, we take yes for an answer, that you want to vacate, you're going to work to vacate it. If you don't vacate it, we'll deal with that when we deal with that.
Correct. Peter, can we go so far as to say that you will accept a street vacation if it's offered by the township?
Yes, actually, it's even further than that. We initiated the discussion, so we want the street, and we will accept it. And Mr. Dominic, who's the Economic Development Director, is here to speak to that if the board wants to hear about that.
Oh, for sure, no. All right. It's best audience we've had in a while. All right. So, do we have any questions for these?
I did have a question.
Sammy, go ahead.
Yeah, so concerning the proximity to the school and the fact that we don't know who the end user will be, what is the range that we're talking about in terms of those large trucks coming up and down the road and the number of cars? Because it is very close to one of our larger schools, and having those types of tractor trailers going in front, back and forth, is of concern to me, and having kids around there. So can you sort of elaborate on that a little bit?
We have a traffic consultant who can talk about trip generations. I think that'll be two witnesses from now.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about that. I don't think we need to hear from your architect. Would like to hear from the traffic expert with regards to trip generation and
distribution.
Yeah. Those are the key things. And we can talk about lot signage for directional signage to direct trucks to the routes that we wish them to go. I mean, this is hard up against 287. You got to be, not going all the way up if you're going to go any other way than towards the 287 exit. It's probably one of the easier warehouses. Now, that doesn't, in terms of where you go, but that doesn't mean people do it. So we're going to want to make sure they do. I want to hear how the egress and entrance is going to do, and the two issues that Jim mentioned. Let's put architecture on hold, and of course, you're going to need your planner. So
Okay.
why don't we do traffic next?
Sure. Rihanna?
Thank you.
Raise your right hand. Solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Please state your name and address.
Rihanna Kirchhoff, RIANNA-KIRCHHOF. I'm a senior project engineer at Dolan and Dean Consulting Engineers, located at 181 West High Street, Somerville, New Jersey.
Can you give the board the benefit of your educational and professional background?
Absolutely. I'm a licensed professional engineer in the state of New Jersey with my license in good standing. I graduated with a Bachelor of Engineering in Civil Engineering from Stevens Institute of Technology in 2011. I've been in the industry for approximately 10 years, and I've been accepted as an expert in various municipalities in the state.
It's accepted. She's accepted, Peter.
Thank you. You were the author, along with Ms. Dolan, of the report that was submitted in conjunction with this application.
Yes.
And you heard the concerns or questions that the board had concerning trip distribution. Well, first of all, let's back up. You've heard the testimony about circulation, on-site parking. I assume you have no comments or no problems with on-site circulation, no problems with the adequacy of parking for this facility, correct?
Correct.
Okay, let's talk about distribution and trip generation, both in terms, if you want to break it down to cars and trucks.
Sure. So my testimony regarding trip generation will primarily refer to our November 23rd traffic impact analysis. Trip generation was developed using the Institute of Transportation Engineers Trip Generation Manual. For the November report, we used the 10th edition. Since then, ITE has released the 11th edition. So for the 436,960 square foot building, we utilized the land use category known as warehousing. At the time that we did the November report, the client was potentially entertaining either a general warehousing land use or a fulfillment center. As you heard Mr. Liz's testimony, he's no longer looking at a fulfillment center, but just a general warehouse. So that is good news, because a general warehouse is not a significant traffic generator. In terms of the 10th edition projections for a warehouse of this size, you're looking at 70 passenger cars during the morning peak hour. That's 70 passenger cars during the morning peak hour, and 9 trucks during the morning peak hour. And then in the evening, it's 71 passenger vehicles and 13 trucks. The 11th edition actually revealed that the rates for warehousing has gone down, so we're looking at less traffic under the 11th edition of the trip generation manual. So the findings in our report dated November 23rd, 2021 is actually conservative. In terms of trip distribution for trucks specifically, what we anticipate is that any trucks traveling northbound on Elizabeth Avenue is going to use Campus Drive over to Cottontail Lane to access I-287, and I believe that's exit 12. If you're looking to go, I guess that would be northbound, or southbound rather, you're looking at exit 10, which you would access via Pierce Street to Davidson Avenue. And that would be the primary way that trucks would access the site. We are not looking to have trucks enter southbound Brook via Elizabeth Avenue. There would be no need for that. The trucks are primarily looking for the major arterial, which is I-287. In terms of traffic analysis, our Our accounts were done in June 2021. We adjusted it for COVID, and then we further adjusted it for our build-out. So what we're looking at is a conservative analysis. Our results are showing level of service C, which is acceptable. There's no degradation at the study intersections, no degradations at the driveways. So you're looking at a minimal impact in terms of the development of the property with a warehouse.
Sorry. With respect to some of the comments that were made during the general public comment, is there any existing signage on Elizabeth Avenue directing trucks to Campus Drive? Are there any truck route designations?
Yes, there is signage, I believe, along the elementary school frontage. There is signage indicating that Campus Drive is, I think it's like roughly 700 feet. You would make a left turn there, and then at the intersection with Campus Drive, there's more signage indicating that you turn left to go to I-287.
Okay. And obviously, if people are going south, or trucks are going south, or employees going south, they would be making a left turn out of the facility, a left turn onto Pierce, a left onto Davidson, and then onto 287, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Do you envision putting any signage on site, especially the truck entrance driveways, to direct the trucks as to where they need to go for either 287 North or 287 South?
Yes, on-site signage would be provided.
Thank you.
All full movement driveways?
All full movement driveways,
Okay.
yes.
Which you're going to need, right?
Yeah.
To get, there's no way to like have one go more left or more right, because you're going to need to get out both of those ways to go either south or northbound, right?
Correct.
Right. And one of the driveways is just a
Right.
car driveway. It doesn't.
Right.
So
One is for
In reality, again, if Grant Street is vacated, that's going to be our main driveway for trucks. The other driveway will be the driveway for cars.
Questions from the board for this witness?
I have some questions.
Sammy, go ahead.
So you addressed that it would be in your study or your testimony that it was fully warehouse, but in the application it says that it could have 50,000 square feet of office. So would you like to comment on that?
Sure. Within the trip generation manual, when they study warehouses, that's how they develop trip generation, is they study real sites. So it is, those real sites have ancillary office space that's specific to the operations of the warehouse. So the trip generation includes the office use, but it's obviously specific to the operations of the warehouse. It's not general office.
Okay, so that would be encompassing the 50,000, that's still within the ancillary use? Okay.
Yes.
And then, to my question earlier, it seems like even if they were to take Campus Drive, they would still be crossing in front of the school. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And so, what were the numbers that you had put? I see in the report it says something like 5 to 13 in the mornings. Is that what it is that you're finding?
Right. So if you're entering from the north, from I-287, you're looking at 5 trucks entering during the morning peak hours and 7 during the evening peak hour, but that's just depending on what part of 287 they're coming from. So it wouldn't necessarily drive past the school. It could also be coming from exit 10.
Right. But there could be heavier uses, is that right?
Heavier uses in terms of what?
In terms of these are just averages, right?
Yes, I think truck activity might be more specific to operations, but general warehousing encompasses various different types of operations.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Bob.
Your figures and conclusions concerning level of service at the intersections and so on, are they adjusted to account for the other 4 or 5 warehouses that are under construction or approved on Elizabeth Avenue within less than a mile of this one? One of them almost next door, 2 of them almost next door.
No, our traffic report does not include that, but when we revise our report to address the board's professional comments, we will include these adjacent approvals.
So what conclusions should we make when we know that you're not including that in your report? Because that's kind of important.
In terms of, I mean, if it's general warehousing, what we understand about that use is that it doesn't typically peak during commuter hours. So we're not anticipating a significant increase or degradation during, peak traffic time when people are going to work, dropping kids to school. Warehousing generally peaks in the middle of the day when traffic volumes are lower. So I would say that maybe not specific to level service C, which I had indicated we showed in our study, but it could very well be, comparable. But I would have to, formally analyze everything in order to speak to that.
Well, what about the idea, I understand that these are not planning to be on the streets during the peak hours, but if all 5 or 6 or so of these are on the roads during the times when trucks are on the roads, even if it's not peak hour, isn't there some kind of a impact that we should be aware of or plan for?
Yes, and I think assuming other traffic studies were done, maybe obviously we'll pull that information to review how that traffic was distributed, so we can properly assess how these intersections will be impacted.
Well, even going one little step further, and I completely agree, the trucks should go Pierce to Davidson, they should go Campus Drive. Our issue, we've been talking about this at different meetings for several months because these trucks do affect us even more than Southbound Brook, even though I have complete sympathy for what your concerns are. But we just approved another warehouse on Campus Drive, less than a mile from here. There are at least 2 other ones or 3 other ones on Belmont who's going to be emptying their truck traffic onto Campus Drive. When do we start taking those into consideration? And, if so, are there things that we could do to ease the situation if it needs it, or, are there any recommendations that you can offer us?
At this time, I without really having a detailed analysis done, I'm not sure that there is any, anything to address if there are any congestion concerns. Campus Drive, as I traveled it today, is a pretty low volume roadway, so the addition of trucks and the truck interaction, I can't anticipate would create a significant issue along the roadway, but that's something that, with our revised study, we'll
we're going around in circles. I can't see a significant issue from this warehouse. But from the other 8 or 9 and adding them all together, I'm a little bit more concerned than just this one. And I'm also a little more concerned than the way we brush by it a little bit. Of all of these, I'm very happy that the school board owns all the land in back of Elizabeth Avenue toward Grant Street. It creates a pretty good buffer. There are no trucks that are going to be going up and down the driveway beside the school. But I am concerned about all of these trucks, and we're only talking right now about the ones leaving the facility, because there'll be other ones entering. And I am concerned about the front of the school, because while the school has a peak hour in the morning and in the afternoon, many schools are generally relatively busy all day long. And this is a conflict of traffic, I think, with these. What can we do? I'm not going to say I'm against the warehouse. We like to see the building and the development too, but I also like to see it fit in with the community and not be an issue.
Can I just add something to Bob's point, just real quick, that if you actually Google from this location to go north, it actually doesn't take you through Campus Drive. it takes you straight up Elizabeth Avenue, right through our neighbors in Southbound Brook, until you hit Edgewood Terrace, and then it cuts you left. And so anybody who's using a normal mapping system would not actually be routed the way that you had advised. They'd actually be routed right through the residential neighborhood of our neighbors here onto Edgewood, and then onto Canal Road, and then onto 287. So just to piggyback on what you're saying, the impact, from that perspective.
Can I sort of respond a little bit to both of those issues? First of all, the Elizabeth Avenue is a county road. They've reviewed this application. They've reviewed a couple of the other applications on Elizabeth Avenue. The county has not concluded that there is the need for any improvements to Elizabeth Avenue because of these warehouses, and they're aware of each and every one of these warehouses, and we've talked to the county about that. Concerning where these trucks go, obviously signage is important. There is some signage there. You may be able to provide more signage, but again, we, the applicant, or even you, Franklin Township, can't just put signs on Elizabeth Avenue. I think that's what Mr. Healy alluded to before, is that you're looking at some sort of a signage package to get the trucks where they need to go, which is on campus and on Pierce and on Davidson. We've had this discussion with one of the previous applications where my client offered to put signs up if you tell them where to put them and get the permission to put them along Elizabeth Avenue or other routes. And this client also would be willing to get involved in posting appropriate signage so that the trucks don't go to Southbound Brook, don't go down Elizabeth Avenue through the residential areas unless that's a destination. We've discussed this at this board on previous occasions. I think all of the warehouse operators are desirous of getting the trucks in and out of Franklin Township as quickly as possible. That's why they're driven to Franklin Township, because of its proximity to 287. We can sign our site. We can't put signage anywhere else unless somebody else in government tells us we can do it.
Right.
And again, my client would be willing to do it. When I did, I think it was 425 Elizabeth Avenue, they offered to put signage up. So again, there's things that can be done to do that, but we need direction and assistance from government.
Yeah, no, and I think that's where, staff like Mark comes in to coordinate that thing on, coordinate such a thing on Elizabeth. What I would ask of you is on your site, you sign it appropriately, or directional sign. I remember the last warehouse we did, we gave them a setback variance, I think, for the sign because it was too close to the road, but it was the only place they could put it. It was well worth the variance because it directed traffic in a certain way. With regards to, Bob's comments, and then I'll let Jim speak because he has a question, but with regards to Bob's comments, I think it's reasonable to ask that your traffic calculations include what has been built. I don't think it's reasonable, Ariana, for you to be asked to assume what may be approved, or, there's no way of knowing how those applications may otherwise be, just like the one tonight, where we come in with 50,000 square feet of office space, we hear maybe 15. That you won't know what that's going to be with other calculations. Not reasonable to ask you to do that. But I'd like to see staff get a report on what the levels of service will be given what has been approved.
We have no problem providing that.
See, I'd like to ask the question and I know I'll always get an honest answer from you. And I get tired of attorneys throwing the county back in our face, because the county, in my experience here, doesn't always look out for Franklin Township at all. All right? My guess is, and it's a guess, you can't honestly tell me that when they reviewed your application, that they reviewed it in the total picture of the other 5 warehouses. So this is by itself harmless. It can be presented as a harmless application, and I agree with it to that point. But we've reached a point now, we've got 25 applications coming for warehouses.
And I can tell you the county has looked at them and is aware of the other applications. And if I don't want you to put your other hat on, but if you recall, when we were talking about at the zoning board, the two temples on South Middlebush Road, the county had us analyze both of them because they were aware that both of those temples were being constructed in proximity to each other, and they made us do an analysis of both of them. So the county is aware of what's going on. They may not do something.
I agree with you with the temples, but that was a different kind of issue.
We're kind of going off here. I mean, what ultimately is going to happen? Now, fortunately, we have Sammy here on the board, who is a member of the Somerset County Planning Board. Sammy, if you could, make sure this is surfaced, because Bob's got a valid point, but we can't continue to beat Peter over the head with this, because at the end of the day, he's responsible for his and his application only, and the county is responsible for looking at the aggregate.
Yeah.
So let's move on to Jim, please.
You testified that the ITE trip generation figures include the office component. Is there a particular percentage of office space to warehouse space that ITE uses? And I ask that because this office component is significantly more than what I see. It's about 11%.
IT doesn't disclose that information. They just let us know that it's part of the trip generation rates and equations that are provided to us for utilization. We could request, information about these specific data points that we look at, but it's not something that's outwardly explained in the manual.
All right, thank you.
Okay, and, Charles, and just want to note that we already heard testimony from Chris, but the traffic section has a few comments, I think, that are quite easy to address, and you've already testified you can address that, because we are not in Burlington County. Comment number 9. Probably cut and paste here. I do that all the time at work.
Yes, I have 2 questions. First question is regarding the ITE trip generation manual. Excuse me. You stated that it looks like the estimate for truck traffic or traffic period is going down, right? Mm-hmm. So how do you justify the need for the additional parking?
Trip generation and parking aren't linked. The use drives the traffic, and the use drives the need for parking.
Correct, so they're linked.
But not that the parking generates trips. It's that the use generates the need for parking, and the use generates traffic accessing the site. So it's not necessarily, you're looking at apples and oranges when you're talking about parking and traffic. It's not necessarily correlated.
Maybe it's more apple oranges and strawberries, but we'll consider that. The next thing is, did it also state that employee parking, the needs are down as well, given current chip generations in a post-COVID society? Haven't you seen a decrease for requirements in parking?
In terms of warehousing, we haven't done any type of analysis that would indicate.
Now that you've done analysis, is your expert opinion that the need for parking spaces is down?
For warehouse use, I can't comment. ITE hasn't really put out any new data that would suggest otherwise.
The other question is, how do you justify the need for a car-only driveway? You all are requesting a variance for additional driveways to protect the car, yet I haven't seen the same concern for protecting the children at the school, particularly when we discuss the need for sidewalks. You stated that traffic is down. The likelihood that the trucks will interact with the cars is very low, and besides, the people in the cars are fully protected from the trucks. So what's the need for a car-only driveway on Elizabeth Avenue?
It's operational efficiency. Trucks take longer times. They need bigger gaps to make turns, so you're having cars process more freely at a passenger car-only driveway than you would if they were queued up behind trucks that are leaving the truck
So it's not
driveway.
a safety issue?
It's also a safety issue in terms of keeping trucks and passenger vehicles separated.
Do you have a study that shows that we need to be protecting cars from trucks when turning into sites such as this?
No, I think it's more of a safety and efficiency in terms of allowing the free flow of traffic not creating congestion or blight at the intersection.
But you stated traffic volumes are down pretty much. The demand is down. You stated that it's down, so we shouldn't be expecting as many trucks, as many cars to the site.
In terms of the ITE projection, there are going to be less passenger cars based on the ITE rates, but the
Right.
trucks remain the same.
Okay, and what was the total number of trucks expected?
It's 9 during the morning peak hour and 13 during the evening peak
So
hour.
very infrequently.
Correct.
I don't see a need for the additional driveway for cars to protect cars from trucks until we start putting emphasis on protecting children from trucks. That's my opinion.
The two driveways are permitted by ordinance. It's not, if Grant Street is vacated, we only have two driveways, and we're allowed to have.
Right now, you're asking for 3. Until that happens, right now, you're asking for 3.
Correct, but if Grant Street is not vacated, then again, we will have to figure out how we're going to
I
address
get
it.
it. I just want to make that point, Peter.
Any other board questions for traffic? If not, we can go to your planner, and then we'll open to the public after, because that'll be your last witness, I think.
Mr. O'Brien?
Kevin, raise your right hand, solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Name and address, please.
Kevin O'Brien, Shamrock Enterprises, Madison House, Madison Avenue, Rahway, New Jersey.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. O'Brien has appeared before this board on numerous occasions and has been qualified as a professional planner. Assuming his credentials are still in order, I would proffer his testimony without going into his education and background.
Absolutely. You're very familiar with Kevin, and your credentials are still out.
They still are, and I brought my card for Mr. Dominack in case he asked that question.
All right.
Again.
Mr. O'Brien, you're familiar with the zoning ordinance and master plan of the Township of Franklin?
Yes.
And you're obviously familiar with the application and the site in question?
Yes.
And can you indicate to the board why we are here this evening and to discuss the variances that we are seeking?
Yes, as has already been discussed, this is for a preliminary and final site plan for warehouse and office. There are variances required through the site plan process for the number of driveways permitted, and currently 3 are proposed where 2 are allowed. Also, front yard parking is also a variance situation in that parking is not allowed in the 50-foot required front yard, and parking is proposed at 12 feet out. The other application is for preliminary and major subdivision to allow 2 lots where there is currently 1. The preliminary and final relief is required because there have been previous subdivisions to this property within the last 10 years. If there had been no other subdivisions, this would be a minor. Also, a variance is required through the subdivision relief, which is for a lot frontage, which is on Marcy Street, and 150 feet are required, and 148.99 is proposed.
And are there any unique aspects to this application that will guide you in rendering an opinion?
Yes. Also, as has been discussed, I'd like to put a planning emphasis on it. Mr. Healy proposed in his report earlier that Grant Street be vacated. As you've heard from the applicant and from the attorney, discussions are underway with the township right now to do that. You've heard from your board members stating that that's a very significant part of this application, and we agree completely. With Grant Street being vacated, that would remove the 2 variances from the site plan application process. That would be for the 3rd driveway and for the front yard parking. Both of those would go away if Grant Street is vacated. But because it has not been yet, that's a process that's ancillary to this proceeding. The request for those variances is still in front of you and would have to be granted as part of this application should you choose to grant it. The office and the warehouse are conforming uses in the BI zone, Business Industrial Zone. This application is located adjacent to Route 287, and that proximity and that access to that highway are what drives the BI zone and in the discussion on the township side as to why warehousing and office are appropriate there. As I just mentioned, the other variance from the subdivision side for Marcy Street is 148.99 of frontage provided. This is a de minimis exception, and in fact, it's 0.0067% off of what the requirement is, so I would definitely consider that a de minimis exception.
Does the master plan give the board any guidance with respect to the variances that we are seeking?
Yes. This is an allowed use. The master plan recommends it, and the zoning ordinance allows it. And the master plan lists this as one of the following, as one of the goals. Goal, encourage commercial and industrial development in areas with access to major regional highways, I-287, and in established areas. Locate major employment and traffic drawing uses in areas where they will least impact residential neighborhoods. And in 2016, the reexamination stated, the manufacturing sector, while declining at the statewide level, continues to maintain a high level of activity in Franklin due to the connectivity to major roadways, availability of land, and presence of workers. And while this application is not for a manufacturing facility, the fact that those manufacturing facilities are here is something that drives the need for warehouse. People are making things, they've got to be distributed, they've got to be transported to places, and this supports that activity here in the township. The township also identified as an issue, maintain sufficient areas of light industrial zoning to ensure a varied tax base. The area available for industrial development has been significantly reduced via the approval of several large-scale senior residential developments in the township, and was raised in one other place in the master plan. Encourage commercial and industrial development in areas with access to major regional highways and in established areas. Encourage infill within established industrial districts to reduce sprawl by increasing density while minimizing environmental impact. This application supports these goals by providing for the office and warehouse complex adjacent to Interstate 287 and minimize impact upon the rest of the township. The zoning ordinance does go on to state the purpose of the BI business zone. I won't read through it. I'll cite it at section 112-8.N for Nancy, and there's a paragraph on why the business and industry zone was established, and that was for a mixture of various uses to take advantage of the centralized location of Franklin in the tri-state area.
So, Brian, can you also allude to the master plan and, the Municipal Land Use Law and indicate whether that would give the board any guidance in granting these variances?
Yes, this application supports several passages of the Municipal Land Use Law, including A, to encourage municipal action to guide the appropriate use or development of all lands in this state in a manner which will promote the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare. F, to encourage the appropriate and efficient expenditure of public funds by the coordination of public development with land use policies, which this township has done by designating this area as appropriate for this use. G, provide sufficient space in appropriate locations for a variety of industrial uses in order to meet the needs of all New Jersey citizens, And M, encourage coordination of the various public and private procedures and activities shaping land development into the more efficient use of the land. By using infill development here as recommended by the township, we are certainly meeting that goal and the other goals with a use that is particularly suited for this site.
Is there any negative impact in the grant of these variances?
Discussion this evening has talked about traffic, and you've heard testimony from the traffic engineer that There will not be any significant impact from this particular warehouse. It will maintain the current level of service. So other than that, I can't think of any impact that this would have upon the area as a whole. This is a location that has been zoned for this. The governing body of this township has taken into consideration its allowance of warehouses and offices and other industrial uses in this particular area. So therefore, it is planned ahead, knowing that these warehouses will have an impact, and felt that this was the place to put them. So I don't see a particular negative impact from this application. And I do want to point out that when I came home from the service, I drove a bus and a truck while I went to school. I still have my CDL. I also have been a member of the Institute of Transportation Engineers for over 30 years, dating back to my graduate school days at NJIT. And I heard the gentleman's comment over on the left here that when you look up Google Maps that they send you into Southbound Brook. I just want to assure you that professional drivers, those who do this for a living, are not going to take that route because they don't use that software. There's special Garmin products that are for trucks. There are special Garmin products that are for RVs. Now, people make mistakes. Just coming down here this afternoon, I was listening to CBS radio, and there was a tractor trailer lost on the Jackie Robinson Parkway over in Queens. These things happen. But compared to the tens and tens of thousands of vehicles that use these roadways on a regular basis, this is a rare event. So I would just say that the professional drivers who know what they're doing know to follow the routes that are assigned to them, because roadways are too small, too narrow. There are overhead problems. And going back to my days as a driver, there are actually atlases for commercial drivers. And now it's all been computerized, and I've actually seen those products. They're really phenomenal.
And in conclusion, if Grant Street is vacated, your testimony is really meaningless, isn't it?
I can go home now, Peter, and make the evening shorter.
He just has a way of making you feel valued.
He does.
I have no further questions of Mr. O'Brien.
Board questions for Mr. O'Brien? Jim, please.
You're justifying granting the variances under the C2 benefit versus detriment analysis, correct?
That's correct.
Have you formulated an opinion whether the benefits to Franklin Township do or do not substantially outweigh the detriments from granting the variances?
I do, and I believe that the benefits outweigh the detriments in this proposal, in that this is a better planning alternative than a more conforming design, one that will be justified particularly with the granting of the vacation of the street. And I would conclude further that this application can be granted without substantial detriment to the public good and without substantial impairment of the zone plan and the zoning ordinance.
And the benefits substantially outweigh the detriment, not just outweigh them?
That is correct. They substantially outweigh in terms of ratables, jobs, economic development for this community and surrounding areas.
Thank you.
I just have a clarifying question.
Go ahead, man.
So the 12-foot variance versus the 50-foot variance, how many parking spots are?
I would refer to our engineer if he knows.
Those are actually trailer parking or trailer storage areas.
So to get from the 12-foot setback to the 50-foot setback, it's 38 feet. The parking spaces are 12-foot wide, so we'd lose 3 or 4 trailer storage spaces.
Once it goes away if Grant Street's vacated.
Okay, so that'll be vacated.
That would go away
If it's
as well
vacated, it
if
would,
Grant Street is
both
vacated.
of the site plan variances, as Mr. O'Brien justified, would go away.
So it seems to me maybe the Grand Street vacating process should proceed to this here. Saying that.
Again, the township staff recommended for the reasons I stated before, and all of the variances that they're requesting relate to the fact that as of right now, that's a public street. So the 12-foot setback from Grant Street to the loading area is technically required because as of right now, Grant Street is still a public street. If it's vacated, that variance goes away because it's just part of internal to the site.
So what is that process and how long?
Well, I don't think we have to get into it here. I mean, it's that I can't really describe the process. I mean, the Township Council would have to pass an ordinance, I would assume, to vacate the street, and I think there's also township properties involved, and there's a legal process that'll have to be followed, and the council will be advised by the township attorney as to exactly what steps they have to take.
But Grant Street right now isn't much of a street. It's just a small dead-end street, right? It's not like going anywhere. It's
Used to have homes, and I think those homes are vacated, and those homes are owned by the applicant anyway, so it serves nobody other than this applicant.
Yeah, so I mean, in the meantime, we have to grant the variances just because that's the situation on the ground we have now. Like it's been stated, if it's vacated, they go away. But because it is such a small street, it's not a street to anywhere, its purpose, even if it weren't vacated, would really serve the same site. It would just be a question of, now it would be officially a township street, so those variances would be in force, and the township would have to find a way for the developer's agreement or something to maintain it, to plow it, et cetera. We don't want that, the applicant doesn't want that, so hopefully, as our representative to council, you will help us with that when the time comes.
I would suggest, if it's appropriate, Mr. Clarkin could let us know that should this be approved, that we should possibly pass a resolution recommending to the council that based on hearing the testimony, we would encourage them or recommend them to vacate Grant Street, might give it a quicker push along.
If the application is approved, I would be happy to include that in the resolution.
Sounds good. Any other questions for Mr. O'Brien? If not, given that they aren't going on 9:30, I'd like to open to the public, so. All right, thank you. So I'll make a motion to open to the public. Second. For comments specific, well, at least I know who's going to second the motion. For comments specific to this application.
Any question?
Carol Schaffner again from Southbound Brook. I really do appreciate that you guys applaud the fact that you're thinking about us. We thought we were in this fight all by ourselves. And what we did, not to reinvent the wheel, we did call Mr. Paul McCall from the DPW. He was the one that put the sign up by campus. And did it help? I can't really say that it did. As far as professional drivers, then I guess we're not hiring professional drivers because we're still getting them. And perhaps what they do are probably following their own car garments rather than truck garments. So maybe that's a solution. Not to reinvent the wheel, we did go out and went up and down campus, Cottontail and Pierce, stopping at every trucking facility and gave them an indication that this is the proper route. So please, if you could think of something else that we need to do, we're all ears. And whatever you come up with your studies, I hope you share it with us. But thank you.
And
Mayor,
yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to let you know that this is also your opportunity to ask any questions you have of the testimony of the witnesses.
I appreciate that, but like I said, we just put the sign up and they're not following it. The drivers are supposed to be professional, and that's not happening. I don't know what the answer is. And nothing for nothing, we're still getting trucks stuck under the Queens Bridge when it definitely says this is too big for you. The flashing lights, so we need to educate the drivers and the companies, that's the company's job, I would think. Thank you.
Have you considered designating some of your roadways as light traffic streets?
Yes, as a matter of fact, Senator Smith gave us that, since we realigned our senators, he was the one that brought that up. And then at least if we have the ordinance, then we could, in fact, ticket the drivers. The other situation that we have is the fact that when, in fact, there's an accident or a detour, that's when we get most of the trouble coming down. And to talk to the traffic person again, all the times that the traffic lights have been knocked down on Elizabeth and Edgewood have been at 3 o'clock in the afternoon when our children are crossing the street. So peak hours depends on what you call them. Thank you.
So Mayor, before you go, let me just say that personally, I want to thank you for coming tonight. I want to thank you for voicing your concerns, and I think it would be very valuable to have your allyship in whatever we do with the county, in continuing to work. You know, we have, 5 municipalities in the state of New Jersey, and that's a problem in my eyes. And everybody has, stuff stops at the borders, but we all know that's not the case. So appreciate that you here tonight.
Thank you for having us.
Donna Piazzolla from Southbound Brook. You know, everyone talks about the traffic. Elizabeth Avenue has a drop-off system for their cars in the morning and at pickup, which means they are even out on Elizabeth Avenue. Southbound Brook has a drop-off in the morning, so we're out on Elizabeth Avenue. So trucks in that time period, at any point in time, is a detriment to the kids. And, you know, all of the professionals here today, none of you live even close to town that you even looked at. Sorry, usually I'm loud enough. That you didn't even look at the potential patterns. So there's a lot to be considered here. And I know it's just not one factory. There's the multiple factories, but our kids are important. I think everybody would agree to that. I raised my kids in the town, and now I'm raising my granddaughter with my daughter in the town. So just be aware of that. And truck drivers don't know what they're doing. They're not using a truck GPS. They're using a car one. So they are going to Google it, and they're going to go down to Elizabeth Avenue. And if they miss Edgewood Terrace, they're going to go straight down our schools to Canal Road. So they're on the roads. And they're on the side roads. When they can't get down the main roads, they go onto our side roads, which are even smaller and narrower. So any help would be appreciated, and anything we can do, we'd be helpful to do it as well.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public? If not,
Mr. Orsini, if I may,
Yes.
Mr. Lizzo would just like to address that issue a little bit.
Go ahead, Peter.
If I may, just for a minute, one thing I want to reiterate that Pete mentioned to start off, Duke, we're in this to start to finish. We're not a merchant developer. We don't build and then sell it. We would be a new neighbor in the community, and that's not something for me to just dismiss. Obviously, I can only do so much within the bounds of our property. It sounds like CME has signage potentially under control, but as much as we can do, I mean, I'm all ears because we're here to stay, to help in the community. So, and I'm not just saying that. Schools, if there's something that can be done at the school to help the lanes where the cars queue, we're all ears. If you need a lane widening within the school to help, not related to this application, I mean, I'm all ears. So, just wanted to say that.
Could I ask you a quick question?
Absolutely.
You're the sole owner, and you're going to be on the premises as an ownership group?
Yes, and that's one of the benefits we have. We manage from start to finish, right? We find the sites, we work on entitling the sites, we build our sites in the Northeast, we maintain our sites. So tenant education comes from us. It's not kicked to some third party we don't sell the buildings. It's in our control, which is good.
Okay, that's good then, because then I could suggest that maybe you could embark on some sort of education program for every single driver that comes to your facility to disseminate the information, letting them know where they should turn, where they shouldn't turn.
100%.
It'd be different if you were renting the facility out to another person and you were never on site. But to me, you sort of have ownership of this.
We do.
If you were going to be there.
We have property managers. We're in constant communication with our tenants. Pamphlets, education, signage, we do it all. Like I said, it's nothing to dismiss as far as I'm concerned, so we do everything we can to control that.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
No, that I agree with Bob. I mean that and Dave, thank you. It's really important to know because most of the applications we get aren't owner operated. They're going to be spec warehouses, and whoever builds them goes away. And we used to have, and back in the days when I was young and inexperienced as a board chair, you'd hear people come in and say, you know, I'm going to make sure that the garbage guy doesn't come at 5 in the morning, and the neighbors won't hear that. Unenforceable. Over the years, have become wiser, and the only way to really do that is with engineering controls. You don't put the dumpster near the houses. You make the curb cuts go a certain way because you can't say, oh, we're just going to tell people to turn that way. It's just practically not feasible. So in this case, it's a little bit different, and that maybe is somewhat feasible, that there's be some driver education. So that's really good to know.
If there's ever an issue, again, you come to Duke. We're there start to finish. You're not dealing with a third party. So we're here. We're all ears, willing to help.
Very good to know. It's probably at least one warehouse that we have a little better chance at not having traffic signals knocked over. Any final board comments before we, sorry, yeah, I do have to close the public portion. Motion to close the public portion. I move that. Second. Charles seconds. All in favor? Aye. Okay. Peter, any summation that you need to have?
Very brief. Again, I think the site plan, there was a great deal of time and work that went into it. I think we've designed the site to function for this large warehouse. We are working with the township to eliminate the variances and to vacate Grant Street. And if that does occur, then basically the variances for the warehouse go away and it's a fully compliant application. With respect to the minor subdivision, the lot that we are creating for the warehouse obviously is a fully compliant lot. The other lot, which has been referred to as Lot B, which we had a discussion on earlier this evening, and Mr. Clarkin has made a determination that lot has access through the access easement, and that the board can grant that subdivision, and that any further development of that lot would be subject to a review by this board at that time to make sure that if that lot was to be developed, it would meet whatever strict standards that you imposed upon us this evening. They would be required to go through the same rigors, and if they can't do it, then they don't get approved. But I think that that lot will function tomorrow, next week, next month, as it currently does function based on the old approval, because the old approval was with that driveway easement and not a public access. So I would respectfully request that the board grant both the site plan and the minor subdivision. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Any final board comments before I entertain a motion? Not seeing any.
I hate to do this, and maybe I missed something because I'm getting old, but we're not going to deal with a landscaping plan or an architect, correct?
Correct. Landscaping plan is compliant. They're putting all, you see from the staff reports, whatever they're deficient, they'll make the contribution in accordance with the ordinances.
If Mr. Thomas is concerned about some additional buffering against the residential, we would be happy to sit down with staff and see if we can put in some additional buffering on that side. I think that was his concern, and that can be a condition of approval.
Yes, and that would be fine. And I was concerned because if you do something with the properties on Grant Street, there could be additional activity that needs buffered. So the more you get in now, the better.
We'll gladly work with engineering and planning on that.
I don't want to sit and try and tell you what trees to plant where, but just so it's getting done.
Mark is good at that.
Just so I can be clear, what residential we're talking about?
Avenue.
Okay, got it.
All right, so I'll make a motion to approve the preliminary site plan and major subdivision with the three variances, two on the site plan and one with lot frontage for the major subdivision, along with the two waivers that were requested. With the also the condition that the applicant and township will work towards a vacation of Grant Street. If that does not happen, that the applicant will construct that as a cul-de-sac. Compliance with Mark Healy's report, CME report, fire, sewer, and obviously outside staff reports, installation of bike racks, pickup and drop-off locations, driver education, which I think we can make a condition because the applicant will own the site, appropriate truck route signage, and the added buffering that was just agreed to. Oh, and sidewalks as well. Thank you, Charles. That's my motion.
Ed has a question.
This would be not the time to ask the question. This would be, well, okay, if it's related to the motion.
I would just like to see in the resolution about the subdivision that applicant has stated that the Lot B will be essentially returned to Rotoclip to be used as previously approved. In other words, the billboard, the solar field. And that, as I think we've agreed, that any new use will require a new site plan approval and some way of...
Well, that would be a given. I don't think we have to make that a condition, right? You're going to come with a new use on that land. But I like the first part, the lot returned to Rotoclip.
It probably should be retained by Rotoclip because it's still owned by Rotoclip and used as it is currently used as a solar field and billboards.
Yeah. Okay. We'll put that.
You'll include that in your motion?
I will amend my motion to include that.
Just one question on the motion, too. You had indicated that it would be subject to, if the vacation doesn't occur, it would have to be a cul-de-sac.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't have plans showing how that would be. You haven't been presented plans showing that. Staff hasn't reviewed plans for a cul-de-sac. I said staff had recommended that if they aren't successful with the vacation, they would have to return to you with an amended approval showing that.
Or revised plans subject to the staff's approval? Are you comfortable with that?
I'm not, because I don't know what that will entail. I don't know how that will change the plans, the approvals.
When we cross that bridge, we'll come to it. You can deter, how about I amend it to this? At staff's discretion. If you think it can be a TRC or whatever, then if you think it needs to come back, then it needs to come back. They agreed to come back, so I'm not going to fight that battle right now.
I think something along those lines would be fair, because if it doesn't change it substantially, obviously if it creates any other, needs new approvals from you in terms of variances, or if it needs something.
Well, I mean, it comes to your office, and then you tell us, like usual, it's a TRC, it's this, it comes to you, or it's, whatever. I'll let you be the determinate, as the professional planner, I'll let you determine whether it needs to come back. If it needs to come back, they've agreed to it, so I'm cool with that. So, okay, any other amendments? All right.
You need a second.
Yes. So can somebody second it? Second from Charles?
Councilman Barson?
Yes.
Carl Houck?
Yes.
Mahir Rafiq?
Yes.
Theodore Chase?
Yes.
Jennifer Ragnow?
Yes.
Mustafa Manzreh?
Yes.
Robert Thomas?
Yes.
And Chairman Orsini?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Oh, and before everybody runs away, we did agree to do a resolution to council that Jim will write, urging the vacation of Grant Street. So can I just word that way?
Well, let me do some wordsmithing.
Okay, go ahead.
Right now?
That's good. Put it in the resolution. All right, that's what I'm saying is I want to have you put it in the resolution. Are we good with that? Yes. I thought you were going to wordsmith that. I'm like, all right. So I'm going to make a motion that we send a resolution to council from the planning board that, based on this application, we strongly encourage the vacation of Grant Street. And have Jim write that up.
Yeah, and Carl just whispered, and there is another little paper street called Harding.
And Harding?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. All right. Can I have a second for that?
Second.
Christine, call the roll just for this resolution, just so we have it. I don't want to do it by affirmation.
Councilman Amerson?
Yes.
Carl Held?
Yes.
Mahir Rafik?
Yes.
Theodore Chase? Yes. Jennifer Ragnar?
Yes.
Mustafa Mendre?
Yes.
Charles Brown?
Yes.
Robert Thomas? Do I call Sammy because it's a different thing, or is part?
No, yeah, call Sammy.
But Sammy, Siobhan,
Yes.
and Chairman Orsini.
Yes. And last but not least, motion to adjourn. All in favor? Aye. Have a great night.
All right.